Okay, so we need to talk about the monster in the room. And by room, I mean your pocket, your desk, probably in your hand right this second.
The glowing rectangle?
The glowing rectangle. We're doing a deep dive on the dopamine detox.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it's the productivity trend that just will not die. You've seen the videos, right? Tech bros in Silicon Valley drinking like only water and staring at white walls for 48 hours straight.
All to reset their brains.
To reset their brains, exactly. It's become the modern version of a juice cleanse, but for your neurotransmitters.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
And that's exactly why we have to do this, because I've got a whole stack of analysis here. We're talking synthesis from Claude, Gemini, Perplexity, all of it, plus deep dives into the actual medical literature.
Claude.
And they are all screaming, and I mean screaming, one thing.
Like that?
The way we talk about this is completely wrong. But, and this is the kicker, the problem it's trying to solve is terrifyingly real. So my question is, are we actually detoxing anything? Or is this just, pseudoscience wrapped in a hustle culture hashtag?
Well, if you want the short answer,
I do.
it's pseudoscience.
Yeah.
Yes. But the long answer is that you are probably addicted to stimulation in a way that is, and this is not an exaggeration, physically altering your brain structure.
Whoa.
And you do need to fix it, just not by detoxing.
See, that's the hook right there. Physically altering brain structure. We're definitely going to get into the nuts and bolts of that downregulation, receptors, the whole mechanism.
We have to.
But I want to start with the myth itself. The name. Because looking at the search data, it's clear people genuinely believe they have too much dopamine in their brains.
Right.
Like it's cholesterol or some kind of toxin, and they just need to flush it out.
Which is, it's such a fundamental misunderstanding of human biology.
Yeah.
If you could somehow successfully flush all the dopamine out of your brain, you wouldn't be zen or focused. You'd be catatonic.
You mean like you couldn't move?
Literally. You could not move. Dopamine is essential for motor control. Look at Parkinson's disease. That disease is characterized by the death of dopamine-producing neurons in the brain. And the symptoms are rigidity, tremors, and inability to even initiate movement.
So the idea of wanting to lower your dopamine to zero is not just wrong.
It's a death wish. It's profoundly wrong.
Okay, so when these influencers get online and say, I'm fasting from dopamine, what are they actually describing? Because they're not comatose.
No, they're not.
They're usually just really bored.
They're bored, and they're conflating two different things. They're conflating dopamine with pleasure, and they're conflating fasting with reducing stimulation.
And those are not the same.
Not at all. The scientific reality is that dopamine is not just about pleasure. That's a huge pop science myth. It's the molecule of anticipation, of motivation.
The seeking system.
It's the seeking system. That's it.
Yeah.
It's what gets you off the couch to go find water when you're thirsty, or food when you're hungry, or a mate. It drives you.
So it's the engine, not the destination.
Precisely. It's the fuel injection system. And the problem we have today isn't that we have dirty fuel that needs detoxing.
What is it then?
The problem is that we've jammed the gas pedal to the floor, and we've been driving at 150 miles per hour for like 10 years straight.
And now the engine is smoking.
The engine is protecting itself. And this is where we get into the really cool science, the concept of neuroadaptation.
Okay.
The brain is always, always seeking homeostasis, balance. So if you constantly flood it with these huge, unnatural spikes of dopamine, from TikTok, from sugar, from porn, from video games, all of it, the brain basically says, whoa, this is way too much noise.
It's overwhelmed.
Completely. So it does something very logical. It downregulates the receptors.
So it effectively puts in earplugs.
Yes. That's a perfect analogy. It literally reduces the number of D2 dopamine receptors. So now you have fewer ears to hear the signal.
And that's why you build a tolerance.
That's why you build a tolerance. That's why the first time you scroll Instagram, it feels novel and exciting. But 5 years later, you're scrolling for 3 hours just to feel normal. Wow.
You aren't detoxing from a chemical. You're trying to regrow your ears.
That distinction, regrowing the receptors versus flushing a toxin, that changes the entire timeline, doesn't it?
Massively.
A detox sounds like a weekend thing. You do it, it's over. But regrowing neural tissue, that sounds much slower.
It is slower, and it requires consistency, not just some 24-hour crash course in suffering.
Okay, let's pull on that thread a bit, the origin of this term. Because our research notes point to one person, a Dr. Cameron Sepa.
Dr. Sepa, yeah.
He seems to be patient zero for this dopamine fasting trend, but the sources all suggest he never meant for it to get this weird.
No, poor Dr. Sipa, honestly. He's a clinical professor of psychiatry. He coined the term dopamine fasting 2.0, and he did it as a catchy label for a cognitive behavioral therapy technique.
So CBT, yes. He was trying to help, tech executives in San Francisco manage their impulsive behaviors, things like stress eating, gambling, endlessly scrolling social media.
So it was just marketing, basically.
It was smart marketing for a behavioral framework.
Yeah.
He just wanted people to be able to recognize impulsive behaviors versus intentional ones.
But the internet is like a game of telephone.
The worst game of telephone. The nuance of CBT got completely stripped away, and the biohackers just grabbed the fasting part and ran with it.
And they turned a psychological tool into a biological cleanse.
Exactly.
It really appeals to that engineer mindset, doesn't it? My code is buggy, I just need to reboot the server.
100%. We love to treat our bodies like machines. If I just stop all the inputs for 24 hours, the cache will clear itself.
But that's not how it works.
The brain is organic. It's plastic, but it's stubborn. You can't just hit reset. You have to retrain it patiently.
Okay, so we've busted the name. It's not a detox. But let's look at the severity of the problem. Because I saw some data in the Perplexity and Kimi summaries that compared smartphones to cocaine.
Ah, yes.
And I feel like that's the other side of the hyperbole coin. Is scrolling Twitter really the same as doing a line of coke?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And the answer is in mechanism. A little bit, yes. In magnitude, absolutely not.
Okay.
And that difference in magnitude is everything.
Break that down for us.
Okay, so a drug like cocaine or amphetamines, it forces a massive, completely unnatural release of dopamine, and then it blocks its reuptake, so it just sits in the synapse.
Right.
You're looking at dopamine spikes of 1,000% or more above your normal baseline. It's a nuclear bomb.
And that burns out the system fast.
Incredibly fast.
Yeah.
Now, digital stimulation, social media, video games, that kind of thing, it does create dopamine spikes, but they're much smaller.
How much smaller?
More in the range of 50 to 100% above baseline.
Okay, so what's that comparable to?
It's comparable to eating a great meal or having sex or, having good conversation. It's within the natural biological range.
So biologically, checking my email is natural.
The level of the dopamine release is within natural limits. But the frequency, that's what's not natural. That's the trap. You don't eat a 5-course meal 600 times a day.
I hope not.
But you might check your phone 600 times a day.
So it's the constant drip feed.
It's the chronic elevation. It's the fact that we never, ever let the baseline return to zero. We're keeping that gas pedal pressed just slightly down, 2047.
So while we aren't addicts in the sense that we'll have like withdrawal seizures.
Right, we're not talking about narcotic level physical dependency.
We are conditioned in a way that makes normal life feel unbearable.
Unbearable is the perfect word. And that leads us right into the diagnosis, right? The why you feel like you need a detox.
Yeah, because unbearable is exactly the word I'd use to describe how it feels to try and read a book lately. And I consider myself a reader. But I sit down, I open a novel, and like 3 pages in, I feel this physical itch, this restlessness.
That itch is the withdrawal. It's the withdrawal from overstimulation. The sources we look at call this the baseline shift.
Explain that concept.
Okay, imagine your brain has a thermostat for what it considers fun or engaging.
Okay.
In an ancestral environment, an environment of scarcity, that thermostat was set really low. Finding a handful of berries was incredibly exciting. Staring at a fire was peak entertainment.
Right, the highlight of the week was a good sunset.
Exactly. But now we live in an environment of complete abundance. We have super stimuli everywhere. The candy is sweeter than any fruit. The video game is more exciting than hunting ever was. The porn is more varied and novel than a real partner.
So the thermostat adapts.
It has to. It slides upward, and it keeps sliding.
So normal becomes boring.
Normal becomes painful. That's the key distinction. When your baseline for stimulation is set to TikTok algorithm, reading a static page of text feels like sensory deprivation.
It registers as a deficit.
Yes. Your brain is literally screaming, where is the rest of the signal? Why isn't this moving? Why aren't there bright colors and sound effects?
It's like my analogy from earlier, eating Skittles for every meal and then trying to bite into a raw potato.
That is the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
The potato has energy. It has nutritional value. But to a palate that's just wrecked by Skittles, it tastes like cardboard.
So the whole point of this Let's call it a resensitization protocol instead of a detox.
I like that. Much more accurate.
The point of it is to make the potato taste good again.
To reset your palate, yes.
But there's a deeper layer here, isn't there? It's not just that we're bored. It feels like we're, I don't know, numbed out. The sources mention the term anhedonia.
Yes, anhedonia. It's the inability to feel pleasure from activities you used to enjoy.
That sounds like depression.
It's a classic symptom of clinical depression and burnout, yes. But we're seeing it now in otherwise healthy people who are just chronically overscrolled.
How does that happen?
When you spike your dopamine constantly, with no breaks, you start to deplete the readily available pool of it. You burn out the receptors, and eventually, nothing feels good anymore.
Wow.
You're scrolling, but you're not smiling. You're not even really engaged. You're just functioning.
No.
Compulsive twitch.
That is a dark image, just a zombie with a thumb swipe.
It is. And we have to acknowledge, this is by design. We are in a cage match with thousands of the smartest engineers at Google and Meta and ByteDance.
And they're using our own biology against us.
They are using variable reward schedules.
That's the slot machine mechanic.
It's the exact same mechanic that makes gambling so addictive. If every time you pulled down to refresh your email, you got a boring message, you'd eventually stop checking.
Right, it would be predictable.
But it's not. Sometimes you get a boring message, sometimes you get nothing, and then sometimes jackpot. You get that big new opportunity or a funny meme from a friend or a like on your photo.
It's the unpredictability.
That unpredictability drives the dopamine-seeking behavior through the roof. It's irresistible to the human brain.
So we're fighting our own biology and capitalism at the same time.
We are, which is why just saying use more willpower is a complete joke.
You can't outwill a supercomputer.
You can't outwill a supercomputer that's been specifically designed to exploit your Paleolithic hardware. You need a strategy. You need a system.
Okay, let's get into the strategy. Section 3. What actually works? We've established that the extreme monk mode, staring at a wall, not talking to anyone, is a bad idea. But why is it a bad idea? If the problem is overstimulation, isn't zero stimulation the logical answer?
It seems logical, but it swings the pendulum way too far in the other direction.
How so?
And it ignores the fact that humans have fundamental needs. We aren't robots that you could just switch off and on. We're social animals.
Right.
And the sources all highlight that this extreme monk mode often leads to a binge-restrict cycle.
Just like a crash diet.
It is exactly like a crash diet. You starve yourself of all input for 24 hours. You feel miserable, you feel lonely, you feel anxious. And then the clock hits the deadline.
And you gorge yourself.
You fall headfirst back into the internet. You haven't learned regulation. You've just practiced suffering. And it makes the craving worse.
And the sources also mention that that kind of isolation specifically cuts you off from good dopamine.
It does. Things like social interaction, eye contact, laughter with a friend. Those things release dopamine, sure, but they also release oxytocin and serotonin. They're neurochemically complex. They regulate your nervous system.
They're healthy.
They're incredibly healthy. If you cut those out, you're not healing, you're just stressing yourself out. And what do we all do when we're stressed?
We reach for comfort. And comfort is usually the phone.
Precisely. The strict extreme detox just sets you up for a relapse. It's designed to fail.
Okay, so we need a stimulation fast, not a life fast. The sources all point to cognitive behavioral principles as being the right way. And there was a specific technique mentioned called urge surfing. I want to double click on this because it sounds kind of groovy, but I suspect it's incredibly hard work.
It is incredibly hard work, but it is the skeleton key for breaking any compulsive habit.
How does it work?
When you put your phone away or you block YouTube, you will feel an urge, a physical, compelling, almost painful desire to check.
I know that feeling.
We all do. And most people think they have only two options. Fight it with willpower, which is exhausting.
Or give in.
Or give in, which defeats the whole purpose.
Right. I must not look. I must not look. Almost always leads to looking.
Urge surfing is the third option.
Yeah.
You don't fight it and you don't feed it. You acknowledge the urge. You label it. I am feeling a strong desire to check my email right now.
Yeah.
And then you just watch it.
Watch it. What does that mean?
You visualize it as a wave in the ocean. An urge has a life cycle. It rises, it gets stronger, it crests, and then, and this is the part nobody ever waits for, it crashes and fades away.
How long does that take?
The intense peak of the craving usually lasts about 90 seconds.
Wait, really? The agony only lasts for a minute and a half?
Chemically, yes. The intense spike is actually very short-lived. If you don't feed it and you don't fight it, it dissipates on its own.
But we usually panic at the first sign of the wave.
We panic and we grab the phone like it's a life raft to make the uncomfortable feeling go away.
Yeah.
Urge surfing is learning to ride that wave all the way into the shore without falling off.
That connects directly to the point about boredom we saw in the research.
Yes.
We treat boredom like it's a medical emergency. Alert! Alert! I am not being entertained.
We treat it like it's physical pain.
Oh.
Did you see that study that was referenced where people chose to receive electric shocks rather than just be bored?
Yes. That blew my mind. I need you to break that down.
So this is a foundational study in the field. Researchers put people in a room with absolutely nothing to do for 15 minutes. No phones, no books, nothing. But there was a button in the room that would give them a mild but unpleasant electric shock. And these were all people who had previously said they would pay money not to be shocked.
But when they were left alone with their thoughts,
A significant number of them, mostly men, interestingly enough, pushed the button.
they shocked themselves on purpose.
They would rather feel physical pain than the existential discomfort of being alone with their own minds.
That's profound. We are shocking ourselves with Twitter to avoid having to sit in the room.
That is exactly what we're doing. And that's why this dopamine detox, or whatever we call it, isn't really about the phone. It's about building the tolerance to sit in the room, to sit with yourself.
So let's build the protocol to get us there. We've got a 4-tier system here, pulled from the best actionable advice in the sources. We're calling it the resensitization protocol.
I like it.
Tier 1 is the daily trim.
This is the non-negotiable one. If you do nothing else from this entire deep dive, do this.
And the rule is simple. No screens for the first hour of the day.
Sounds simple. For most modern humans, it is actually torture.
Why, in the morning specifically? Why not an hour before dinner or something?
It's because of the cortisol dopamine loop.
Yeah.
When you wake up, your cortisol, the stress hormone, is naturally at its peak for the day. It's part of what wakes you up.
Right.
If the very first thing you do is look at your phone, you are almost certainly injecting anxiety into that high cortisol system. You're seeing bad news, stressful work emails, social comparison on Instagram.
So you're validating the stress that's already there.
You're pouring gasoline on it.
Yeah.
And what's the brain's quickest way to soothe that stress? A hit of dopamine.
Sure.
So you start scrolling more. You're setting up a reactive, anxious loop for the entire day before you've even had a sip of coffee.
Okay. Let me play devil's advocate here.
Right.
What if you're a listener, let's say you work in finance or you're a stock trader, you feel like you need to know what the markets did overnight.
Okay.
If you miss that first hour, you could lose money. What do you say to that person?
I'd ask them a question. Do you need the notifications or do you need the information?
That's a good distinction.
If you need to check the markets, fine. Walk to a computer, sit down at a desk, check the specific numbers you need to see, and then walk away. That is tool use.
And the alternative?
What you don't need is to lie in bed and scroll through Twitter to see what a bunch of anonymous accounts think about the market. That is not tool use. That is pacification.
Tool use versus pacification. I like that. Okay, so tier 1 is protecting the morning. Tier 2 is the work filter. This seems to be targeted at the multitaskers.
This is based on the concept of attention residue.
This comes from Sophie Leroy's research, doesn't it?
That's right. The core idea is that you cannot truly multitask. Your brain can only switch task. And every time you switch from context A, let's say your report, to context B, a text message,
Yeah.
a part of your brain, a residue of your attention, remains stuck on context B when you try to go back to writing the report.
So you're leaking cognitive power every time you switch.
You're hemorrhaging it. Research suggests that if you're checking your phone or emails every 10 minutes, you are effectively working with a temporary IQ drop of 10 to 15 points.
You are literally making yourself stupider.
In the moment, yes, absolutely.
So the protocol for this tier is all about creating friction.
Extreme friction. The rule is, put the phone in another room.
Not just face down on the desk.
No. There are studies showing that the mere presence of your phone, even if it's turned off and face down, reduces your available cognitive capacity.
Just by being there.
Yes, because your brain is constantly running a tiny background process.
Is it buzzing? Where is it? Should check it. I wonder if anyone emailed me.
It's like trying to diet while sitting next to a tray of fresh donuts. It takes mental energy just to ignore them.
That's the perfect analogy. So remove the donuts, put the phone in a drawer in the other room. If you absolutely have to keep it nearby for some reason, use grayscale mode.
I've tried grayscale. It's amazing how annoying and effective it is. It completely strips the visual reward out of the device. Instagram, in black and white, looks like a boring spreadsheet. Your brain just goes, ugh. This is work, and you put it down.
It makes the apple look like an apple again, not candy.
Exactly.
Okay, tier 3. This is the big one, the weekend reset.
This is the 24-hour fast, usually best done on a Saturday or a Sunday when you have more control over your schedule.
Now, this is where people really fail, isn't it? Because of the void. They take away the phone and they just sit there.
And that leads directly back to the electric shock problem. You cannot just remove a behavior. You absolutely must replace it. You have to have a pre-planned menu of slow dopamine activities.
Okay, give me some examples. What counts as slow dopamine?
Anything that has a significant delay between the effort you put in and the reward you get out. Fast dopamine is swipe reward, zero delay.
Yep.
Slow dopamine is, I have to chop the vegetables and saute the onions and simmer the sauce for an hour, and then I get the reward of tasting the delicious meal.
So cooking is a great one?
Cooking is excellent. Reading a physical book, playing an instrument, gardening, going for a long walk without headphones, anything that can induce a flow state.
Flow is that feeling where you lose track of time, right?
Exactly. But here's the catch with flow states. They require an entry cost. There's friction.
What do you mean?
The first 20 minutes of trying to write something or practice the guitar or even just weeding the garden, they usually feel like work. There's resistance. You have to push through that initial friction to get to the flow.
Whereas fast dopamine has zero friction. It's designed to be effortless.
And that's why we always default to it. We are fundamentally energy-conserving, lazy mammals.
So the weekend reset is really a training ground for pushing through that friction.
That's all it is. You're teaching your brain a simple lesson. If I stick with this slightly boring thing for 20 minutes, it will eventually become satisfying. You're widening your palate.
And tier 4, this is the end game. The lifestyle shift. The deep life.
This is about long-term digital hygiene, and it's based on one simple rule.
What's the rule?
If a human didn't type it, it doesn't get to buzz my pocket.
I love that rule. Break it down.
Go into your phone's notification settings right now. A text message from your friend. Okay, keep that. A phone call from your mom? Keep that. But Instagram, 5 people like your story, Uber Eats, it's Taco Tuesday, CNN, breaking news.
Turn them all off.
All of them. Off. Those are the hooks. Those are non-human interruptions. They are algorithmic attempts to steal your attention for commercial purposes.
So by turning them off, you shift from a push dynamic
where the world is constantly pushing information at you
to a pull dynamic
where you consciously choose when you want to pull information towards you.
You reclaim your agency.
And agency is the exact opposite of addiction.
Let's move to section 5 then, benefits and expectations. Because this all sounds like a lot of work. Putting my phone in a drawer, cooking from scratch, being bored. Why am I doing all of this?
You're doing it to get your brain back. The sources we reviewed highlight 4 main benefits: focus, time, mood, and agency.
We talked about focus reclaiming those lost IQ points. What about time?
Just look at your weekly screen time report on your phone. The average for most people is, 4 to 6 hours a day?
Painfully, yes.
If you reclaim even half of that, that's 2 to 3 hours a day. That's 20 hours a week. That is a part-time job.
Wow.
That's enough time to learn a language, to get in the best shape of your life, to write a novel, to start a business.
When you frame it that way, it's not giving up TikTok, it's gaining a second life.
Exactly. And then there's mood. We touch on anxiety, but let's talk about nervous system regulation. When your neurochemistry isn't spiking and crashing all day long, you just feel stable. The world feels less urgent, less frantic.
But we have to be realistic here. The sources mentioned the pink cloud effect.
Yes, the pink cloud is a well-known phenomenon in addiction recovery. A few days into a detox or a fast, you might feel amazing, euphoric even. You think, I'm cured, nature is beautiful, I love reading.
And then Tuesday morning happens.
And then Tuesday morning happens, the euphoria fades, and you're just a normal person, sitting in a boring meeting without your phone to distract you. That is the danger zone.
That's when people relapse.
That's when they relapse because they think, oh, the magic is gone, this isn't working anymore.
So what's the advice for that moment?
Expect it. Know that it's coming. The goal isn't constant euphoria. The goal is a sustainable, calm baseline. Boredom will return. Stress will return. This protocol is about having the tools to handle those feelings without needing to numb out.
And we absolutely need to address the neurodivergent elephant in the room here, ADHD.
Yes, Crucial.
I can imagine listeners with ADHD screaming at us right now saying, my brain literally doesn't make enough dopamine. I need the stimulation to function.
And they are, to a large extent, absolutely right. ADHD involves a deficit in what's called tonic dopamine, the background level, so that hunger for stimulation is biological. It's not just a bad habit.
So does a stimulation fast even work for them, or is it just a form of torture?
It's harder, but it's arguably even more important for them. Because if your baseline level of dopamine is already low and you flood your system with cheap, fast, high-intensity dopamine from TikTok, you desensitize the few receptors you do have.
You make the deficit worse in the long run.
Exactly. The crash is harder. The inability to focus on boring but important tasks becomes even more pronounced.
So what's the solution?
For the ADHD brain, environment design is everything. You cannot rely on willpower. You have to use the work filter tier, literally locking the phone in a box, because your frontal cortex, which acts as the brakes of the brain, is already underpowered. You have to outsource the braking system to a lockbox.
That's a very compassionate way to look at it. It's not about shame. It's about getting the right prosthetics.
It's all about prosthetics and systems. Exactly.
Okay, section C, integration. We're bringing this all home. There was a golden rule from the Gemini summary that really stuck with me.
What was it?
The goal isn't to suffer. It's to create space so you can choose what you give your attention to.
Choice. That is the entire game. Right now, for most people, there is no choice. The thumb moves before the conscious mind can even cast a vote.
And this brings up the idea of moderation versus elimination. Is the end state here that I can never use Instagram again?
For most people, no. Unless you have a truly pathological, life-destroying addiction to something, total abstinence isn't necessary or even practical in the modern world. The goal is intentional use.
Which means you have to identify your specific poison.
Right. Personalization is absolutely key. For me, for example, Twitter is a dangerous trap. I can lose hours there. But Instagram, I couldn't care less. I can look for 2 minutes and close the app without a second thought.
For me, it's YouTube Shorts. That infinite scroll of short videos is just hypnotic.
So your personal protocol needs to target YouTube Shorts. Maybe you use an app to block that specific feature, or you set a strict timer. You don't need to detox from your email if email isn't your drug of choice.
So be surgical about it.
Do a surgeon. Don't amputate the whole leg if you just have a splinter in your toe.
I want to end with a concrete challenge. We've talked a lot of theory, but if a listener wants to do just one thing starting tomorrow, what is it?
Just one thing. It has to be the daily trim.
Walk us through the physical steps. What do you do tonight?
Tonight, before you go to bed, take your phone charger and plug it in somewhere in the kitchen or the living room, anywhere that is not your bedroom.
Okay.
Then go buy a cheap alarm clock, a real old school, non-internet connected alarm clock.
$10 on Amazon.
$10 on Amazon. In the morning, you wake up, you turn off the alarm, you get up, you go to the kitchen, you make coffee, you drink the coffee, maybe you look out the window.
And you don't touch the phone.
You do not touch the glowing rectangle for the first 60 minutes of your day.
And while you're doing that, you should pay attention to how painful it is.
Notice the itch. Notice the way your hand reaches for your pocket. Notice the voice in your brain saying, but what if there is an emergency? Spoiler. There isn't. Just observe it. Don't act on it.
And then see how the rest of your day feels.
I can almost guarantee you will feel a noticeable difference in your ability to focus by 10 a.m.
It's a small, quiet revolution.
It really is.
You know, we started this whole deep dive by asking if the dopamine detox is a myth. And I think we found out that, yes, the name is a complete myth. You can't flush a neurotransmitter.
No, you can't.
But the spirit of it, the underlying need to reclaim our own minds from the attention economy, that is probably the most important battle of our generation.
I would agree 100%. It's the battle for our cognitive liberty. If you can't control your attention, you can't control your life.
And that's really the thought to leave you with. Who's in the driver's seat? Is it you, or is it the algorithm?
Make sure it's you.
Thanks for diving deep with us. Now go buy an alarm clock. We'll see you next time.